What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Week 2 preview of the Blogger Bowl. I am Dan Weiner, joined, as always, by Matt Rooney from the hotel. He's got a wedding tomorrow night. He's got to do another show at, I think he said 3:15 Eastern. So we are going to rock and roll and launch into our previews for this week. We have 4 games on the agenda we are going to talk about, and then we will do our bets for the day. We are going to go in chronological order. We are going to start with the biggest story in college football, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Wait, no, that's not right. Sorry, the Colorado Buffaloes. No, of course.
Two pretty big stories.
Yeah, an old rivalry rekindled as Nebraska and Colorado get together at Folsom Field in Boulder for the home opener of the Deion Sanders era. I think Colorado is going to win this game. But trying to play devil's advocate against myself, here's my case for Nebraska. I think Nebraska might actually have a defense, which TCU did not. They had 3 sacks, held Minnesota to under 3.5 yards per rush. I think there's one schematic thing I'm really fascinated by. Nebraska also runs the 3-3-5 defense like TCU does. So Tony White, their coordinator, has a chance to see what TCU did and what didn't work and game plan off of that. One advantage Colorado had against TCU was that TCU had no film, right? You could watch Kent State games to see Sean Lewis's tendencies. You could watch Jackson State tape to see some of what their players did. But the more Colorado puts on tape, the more opposing coordinators can game plan against it. One note for the Colorado defense, TCU ran 82 plays. Matt, do you want to guess how many sacks and tackles for loss combined Colorado had in those 82 offensive plays that TCU ran?
3.
Less.
0.
They generated
That's not good.
0 tackles for a loss.
That's not good.
Nebraska's offense was bad against Minnesota, but maybe they can look better against a bad defense. But the one thing Colorado did exceptionally well in that game was force turnovers when they needed them. And if Jeff Sims can't protect the ball, they're in trouble, and they're going to have to generate explosive plays, which they did not do against Minnesota. So like I said, if Nebraska cannot match Colorado strike for strike, which I don't think they can, I do think Colorado is going to win this game. Matt, what do you expect to happen?
I think it's going to be an entertaining game. It's not going to be to the scoring level I think that we saw in TCU and Colorado because, like you said, I think Nebraska is going to play defense. I think they have a good coaching staff that now has tape of what they do, which was a very good point. They run what TCU runs. They have tape of what to do, what not to do, what works, what doesn't work. And I think they're going to play a little bit more disciplined football than TCU did. TCU's defense just looked absolutely awful. And Colorado, give credit to them. They executed, but a lot Dylan Edwards had some unbelievable breakaway speed, but a couple of his touchdowns were just flips on swing routes out to the outside, like little bailout checkdowns. And whoops, nobody can tackle him. Not to say that those weren't nice plays. Not to say that Dylan Edwards didn't make plays because he did. But I feel like a couple of those touchdowns were on TCU's defense as much as Colorado's offense. So I think we'll see some better defense against going up against Nebraska. And it's going to come down to whether or not Jeff Sims can take care of the football. And if you're banking on Jeff Sims taking care of the football, I don't want to bank with you. I don't think that's a very wise decision. I think it's going to be fun for a little while, but I think Colorado's just going to be too much. And I think they're going to take the ball away from Nebraska more. And that's going to be the difference in this game.
Yeah, I mean, they were not covering Dylan Edwards, and it's kind of like fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing. Like, they just weren't covering him coming out of the backfield. So if there's one thing I'm willing to put kind of money on, it's that at least Nebraska is aware of that, and it won't be likely that he'll be uncovered. Now, he might be fast enough to outrun whoever they put on him, but I don't know if they've got the horses just on both sides of the ball to stop Colorado, and if it's a shootout, it doesn't really seem to bode well for Nebraska in that game. By the way, on that, I should have set us up a little better. Colorado is a 2.5-point favorite. The total 58.5. If you like Colorado, I think the over is probably a play in that situation there.
Mm-hmm.
Another big game. A quarter of the way. We'll be a quarter of the way through the season. The second week of the season for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Or wait, do they get an extra game because they played in Ireland, or is that just?
I don't think so. I don't think they're good.
So we're going to be a quarter of the way through the season for the number 10 Fighting Irish as they take a trip to Raleigh, North Carolina to take on NC State. Notre Dame a 7.5-point favorite. The total 50.5. I'm just going to lay out for the most part to you on this, Matt, but I'll just say this. If NC State does not stop the run better than they did against UConn in their opener, they have not played since the opening Thursday night of the season, so they've had some time to kind of assess what happened there. But if they don't stop the run better, it is going to be a long afternoon for the Wolfpack.
Yeah, not to like oversimplify this, Dan, but like that's kind of it. Like if NC State has a chance in this game, they're not gonna. I think it was 160 yards on the ground to UConn. Like you got to stop the run. The Notre Dame has what we've seen now. Obviously, Audric Estime, we know he's very good. The offensive line is very good, but they've shown some depth in that stable of running backs. Chris Tyree moved a receiver. Logan Diggs transferred to LSU. They've kind of replaced those guys with a stable behind them. Jeremiah Love, he was my freshman to watch this year, had a really nice explosive touchdown run. Like they got a stable. NC State's going to have to be able to contain them. I am interested to see Sam Hartman in this one too because he's been pretty darn close to perfect through 2 weeks. But if I give a bunch of crap to Michigan for playing nobody, I'm not going to give crap to Notre Dame because they have an NC State game. But Notre Dame's pretty much played nobody, and they kind of sleptwalked through a half against or I should say a quarter against Tennessee State before turning on the Jets. Can they, from snap one, kind of snap right back into being, all right, this is a big game. This is a real opponent who can beat us. Can they have that focus? Can they maintain that all game long? I think they can. I think they're going to be fine, but they're going to need to avoid a slow start like they had against Tennessee State because you don't want to give a good team like NC State too much leeway, too much hope on the road, or an offense with the capability, I should say, the ceiling of Brennan Armstrong and Robert and I together. Like that's they weren't great against UConn, but you know what that duo is capable of. So hopefully Notre Dame is able to come out, run the football. I think they will, and I think this is a not a blowout game, but like kind of one that Notre Dame just controls from start to finish and wins something along the lines of 31-17, something like that.
Started to gaslight myself into thinking NC State's going to keep this game close. Just like the weird, like they're at home, they've had over a week to prepare for this game, and then you have the like I talked about it after they played UConn. It's like NC State is never a team that's good when they have eyeballs on them, but when they're able to kind of fly under the radar a little bit, that's when they excel. I don't think that Notre Dame's taking them lightly, nor would they ever take them lightly, but I'm starting to wonder if maybe that's what's going to happen here. I don't think that's going to be what happens, but I've kind of like my part of my brain is like, well, it's like the kombucha girl meme. It's like the no, like
I think we have potential for a closer first half, but I don't think Notre Dame's going to stop trying to run the football, even though they have Sam Hartman. They know they can run the football on anybody, and I think it's just going to be a matter of kind of grinding NC State down until they break a big one or two, and then open things up.
Yeah, it's going to be a matter of like just making sure they don't get too cute with it.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. Oh, here we go. All right. So
fingers crossed for Notre Dame's offense. I don't want to take shots at Tommy Rees because Tommy Rees did a nice job as Notre Dame's offensive coordinator, but he had the tendency to get too cute when he's bored. Gerard Parker hasn't really done that yet. Luckily, it's two games where he hasn't really had the chance to or needed to, but he hasn't gotten bored with what Notre Dame does well, and that was Tommy Rees's biggest issue. They'd be doing something really well, and he'd be like, you know what we should do on 1st and 10 instead of handing to Audric Estime, who's got 5 yards of carry? We should have Drew Pine go back and throw one deep to Jaden Thomas, see if we can't hit. So like they haven't done that yet. So fingers crossed.
So I'm gonna lay out a scenario. I'm gonna read some stat lines to you, and you tell me if you would be okay with this situation.
Sure.
Brennan Armstrong, 407 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Sam Hartman, 270 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Would you be okay?
Yeah, I'd take that.
That was a 37-17 Wake Forest win over Virginia a couple years ago when these two quarterbacks went against each other when they had good. I didn't look to see if they played last year.
If Sam Hartman throws for 270 and three touchdowns, no interceptions, I don't think Notre Dame has an issue. I think the way Notre Dame loses this football game is if they turn the ball over.
Yeah, I want to see. Now I've got to look since I've got it here if he played against Virginia last year, which would have been tragic. No, he did not play against Virginia. That
I was going to say I didn't think so.
They did not, so I just had to double check to see. So hopefully we get something good. The other game that I think is most intriguing on the schedule this week, we thought it was going to be the case last year. It was a hilarious calamity of
a hilarious, terrible football game
last year, but there's some optimism in both places. The Aggies of Texas A&M hit the road. They're the number 23 Texas A&M Aggies are 4.5-point favorites on the road at Hard Rock Stadium against the Miami Hurricanes. Both teams played bad opponents in week 1, but hey, they actually looked like football teams. At least for 1 week, there's harmony with Texas A&M's offense, and the talent level is pretty damn high if we are being honest. Connor Wegman looked good. Evan Stewart showed last year that he can be an absolute dude, and he had some moves in that game that were awesome. But Noah Thomas was the revelation in week 1. 5 catches all of last season. He had 6 catches, 74 yards, 3 touchdowns against an admittedly terrible New Mexico team. He's a matchup nightmare. We talked about Johnny Wilson at 6'7". Noah Thomas is 6'6". They didn't even get much out of Anaya Smith and Moose Muhammad. So the ceiling for that passing offense is very, very high. Miami's going to want to play keep away. They got 16 carries, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns from Henry Parrish and Mark Fletcher Jr. They ran for 6.9 yards per carry against Miami of Ohio as a team. The passing offense was efficient but not explosive against Miami. Miami of Ohio, rather. 62% success rate, only 2 explosive plays. If they can run the ball to set up the pass, they can keep A&M off balance. I wrote this in my notes and then saw something that kind of contradicted it, and it bums me out. I was really hoping that we would see Hard Rock Stadium be a legitimate home field for Miami in this game. I know it's 30 minutes from campus. I know it's a tough sell, but I mean, and I know that they haven't.
It shouldn't be for this game, though.
I know that they haven't given fans a lot to really hang their hat on the past few years, but this is the kind of game where fans need to have that kind of fanatical support and belief, even if the program hasn't earned it. Make Miami a tough place for opposing teams to play. And then I saw something yesterday on Reddit that Miami is offering a BOGO ticket offer. You buy 1 ticket for this game, you get a ticket for the Georgia Tech game in October in the same section for the same price. So they are trying, and I'm not sure if that's just trying to sell tickets to the Georgia Tech game or if they're trying to fill this game or both. But
a little bit of both.
I want to see that. I want to see that place packed, and doesn't seem like it's going to be a heavy Miami crowd. I'm sure A&M fans will pack it. They will not mind the heat. It is going to be exceptionally hot down there, South Florida, in early September. But to me, if Miami cannot again, if Miami falls behind, I don't know that their passing game can match A&M's. So they're going to have to play keep away as much as they can. I really like what A&M's skill position players do, and as long as the coaches aren't fighting with each other, like I said, I think the ceiling for their offense is pretty high.
Yeah, I think I kind of like A&M big in this one the more I think about it. I know Miami had a nice 38-3 performance at home against Miami, Ohio. That's all well and good, but Tyler Van Dyke still wasn't overly impressive for me. I think he threw for just 200 yards now. They only threw the ball 22 times, but still he turned the ball over. Miami's going to be able to run the football a little bit, but Texas A&M still recruited very well on that side of the ball and has some dudes on defense. And I think A&M's offense is just going to be too much for Miami to deal with. I don't think they're going to be able to keep up with it. They're going to have to start throwing the football at some point. I'm just not sure they're going to be able to match, like you said. I don't think Van Dyke can match Wegman with the weapons he has. I don't think he's nearly as good as Wegman. I don't like that I'm buying into Texas A&M right now, but I'm kind of starting to buy into Texas A&M right now. Now, the first sign of adversity to see what happens between Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino will be absolutely must-watch TV, and I hope they have a camera on Petrino at all times in the box as well. But I don't think it's this moment. I don't know. I just kind of feel like this is another embarrassing Miami loss at home that we're all the U's never coming back.
We talked about not buying the hype. My thing is, you have my attention. The Texas A&M passing offense has my attention.
Yeah. They started to grab it last year, for being totally honest. Like, Connor Wegman made a difference when he came in. He probably should have just threw him in right away. But, like, that offense started clicking when he came in. That team beat up LSU, and they were able to do just about whatever they wanted in that football game. Like, that's not – I know they've been a punchline for a while, and I'm not saying they're a college football playoff team, but I think they're a pretty good football team this year.
Yeah, I mean, the talent is there. We know it's still kind
Clearly,
of young because that legendary recruiting class, those guys are all sophomores, but like the
now
talent
it's year 2.
If they can get there, like, and we don't even really know what their running back, if they've got a bell cow running back yet. It was kind of running back by committee a little bit the other day. Ruben Owens was like the stud that they recruited, a guy who his recruitment was kind of wild. He committed to like 3 or 4 different places and ended up at A&M. He's a really talented kid. And
I think he was Notre Dame, then Louisville, then Texas A&M.
And Texas was in the mix at one point for him too. Like, he was all over the place and ended up at A&M. Their defensive line has a ton of talent. Like, the talent is there. Can they manifest it? This is a huge, huge test for them. They have my attention there. The big game of the week is in Tuscaloosa, as it's a battle of SEC powerhouses. Not really. The 11th ranked Texas Longhorns head to Tuscaloosa to take on the number 3 Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama currently, at least at FanDuel, a 7-point favorite, a 53.5 point total here. Obviously, I have a ton of notes. So as a casual observer, just of someone who watches college football but may not have as much of an interest in this game as I do, Matt, what do you expect to see on Saturday night in T-Town?
I was just going to say I'll start sipping my coffee here and let you go to town on a breakdown.
I'm fine
No,
with
but
that.
I'm with man. I don't know what I expect to see because I there's a wide range of outcomes that would not shock me, and I know we talk about that a lot with college football games. But I'm just so fascinated to watch Quinn Ewers and see which Quinn Ewers we get. Do we get the Quinn Ewers that was on the verge of beating Alabama last year at home before he went down and got hurt? Or do we get the Quinn Ewers that came back in the second half, was coming off an injury? The game looked a little fast for him. Coaching staff didn't do him too many favors. Do we get that tentative, hesitant one, or do we get the one that had Alabama on the ropes for how it was 2 quarters before he went down? I really hope we get the latter, or the former, excuse me, not the latter. I would love to see that good Quinn Ewers because I truly think if Texas's offense is buzzing, I don't think Jalen Milroe, the offense Alabama is going to want to run with him. I'm not sure they're going to be able to keep up with Texas and what they can do if they have that explosive passing game. I think you were talking about Miami wanting to control the football. Alabama's going to try and control the football for 4 quarters. And if Quinn Ewers is lighting it up and playing to his fullest potential, I think Texas is an incredibly live dog on the money line.
So I'm going to start with the Alabama side of things. I'm not going to read too much into what Alabama did to Middle Tennessee. They did what they were supposed to do, but you'd much rather Jalen Milroe play well than play poorly, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
He looked like the guy they hoped he could be, but this is obviously a much, much bigger test. You also don't want to read too much into the Texas-Rice game, and maybe it's confirmation bias, but the Texas defensive line looks every bit as dominant as I thought they could be. This is going to be one of the best defensive lines Alabama faces all year. It's an SEC caliber defensive line. It's a really stiff test for them. The question for Texas is going to be, how do they defend the quarterback run game? I believe if Texas can contain Jalen Milroe on the ground and make him one-dimensional, they've got a really good chance to limit what Alabama's going to do on offense. On the other side of the ball, the Texas offense was not very inspiring against Rice. Some of that might just be first game stuff you need to work out. The offensive line is supposed to be a strength, and they weren't very good. They have to be significantly better than they were against Rice, or they're going to be in serious trouble. The other thing, though, that continues to be a concerning trend that goes beyond the Rice game is the Quinn Ewers deep ball accuracy. Last year against Alabama, he threw a gorgeous ball for 46-yard completion to Xavier Worthy and then immediately got hurt. He looked good when he came back against Oklahoma, but from then on, he was just wildly inconsistent with the deep ball, and a lot of the throws were nowhere in the vicinity of the receiver. He was 0 for 6 on 20-yard throws against Rice, and none of them were particularly close. They have to be able to stretch the field on Alabama. We saw Alabama was vulnerable to the deep ball last year. Defensive backs Jalen Key, Malachi Moore left the Middle Tennessee game with injuries. Saban said they're day-to-day, but would not elaborate further. But the big overarching question for Texas is going to be, do they have big-time players on this roster? To quote the wise prophet Santana Moss, big-time players step up in big games. Opposing fans hate Texas. Every time they go on the road, it's a hostile environment, but they've never been in a hostile environment against a team that also has a better roster than they do. They need somebody to step up, and it starts at quarterback. Ewers was the number 1 recruit in the country. He's expected to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and he hasn't really shown much of that since that Oklahoma game last year. This is the time he needs to be the prince who was promised. If he's good, Texas has a chance to pull off the upset here. If he isn't, they are DOA. The last point, guy I'm expecting to be key for Texas, Adonai Mitchell. They were calling him Adonai. I thought it was AD, but we're going to go with the full name his mama gave him, Adonai Mitchell. Caught touchdown passes in both semifinal and national title games. Each of the last 2 years, you're talking about who's got that big game experience for Texas, and there's not really anybody, but this guy has played for and won national championships. He never played at Alabama while he was at Georgia, but I do think that he is going to be a guy who is going to be key, a guy that Quinn Ewers can lean on. I will say the one guy who did look really, really good for Texas on offense was Xavier Worthy, which was encouraging. Obviously, he was a little bit mercurial last year, seemed to be really unhappy at times with how the season was playing out, but he looks refocused. He wants to be a first-round pick this year, and he's got to play better than he did last year. And against Rice, the consistency that was lacking last year was there. So the Texas passing game should be better, but can the offensive line hold up? Can they communicate? Last year in Austin, the crowd was a real factor. Alabama had so many procedural penalties in that game. Can Texas avoid that kind of stuff? I don't think Texas is going to win. I do think they can win this game. I'm excited for it. I told you the other day, I do think that this is going to be a lower scoring game. The 7, I don't want to really touch, but we'll move right ahead into our bets for the week because I talked about it the other day. The first bet that I made this week was the under on this game. I got
What's
it.
Total?
I got it at 56.5 when it opened.
Ooh, I do like that's a.
Well, it's 50. It's down to 53.5 now.
Okay.
I think that's still bettable.
I still think that's a lot of points.
That feels like my predictions, like either 28-21 or 28-24 Alabama. Like I do think this game is going to be a tightrope walk for both of these teams. I just don't think we're going to see a lot of scoring in this game because I think that the Texas offense isn't as up to par with their defense, and I think their defense is capable of really giving Alabama some problems. I think it's just going to be a slugfest kind of game come down to the fourth quarter. So under 56.5 was my first bet. 53.5 is where it's sitting now at FanDuel. I don't know what other numbers are out there for that game, but I have 4 other bets this week, Matt, and
let's hear them.
You know how I was like, don't overreact to week 1?
I love overreacting to week 1. It's one of my favorite things.
I'm like, I almost bet every single Pac-12 underdog this week.
Hell yeah.
Stanford plus 29.5 at USC. I'd go.
Ooh, that's on my card.
I would go as low as
I actually got it. I got it at 30.5 when it opened, or closer to the week when it opened.
Yeah, I wish I had gotten that number. I think it opened at 31.5, and I really wish I had gotten that number. I'll just say I'd go as low as 28.5. If I get above 4 touchdowns on this, I would take Stanford. Their roster is actually more talented than I realized based on just like raw recruiting talent. They have a top 40 roster.
And they looked like they had a modern-ish offense against Hawaii. Like it wasn't just David Shaw putting 8 offensive linemen on the line of scrimmage with a fullback, quarterback, and running back and running power. No offense. I love power. I'm for offensive lineman. I love the beauty of running power, but time and place and do it out of multiple sets. They seem like they had somewhat of a modern offense. Good on them.
Yeah, Troy Taylor, I think, is a really good head coach. Talked about what he did at Sacramento State, turning them from a nothing program into a very good FCS program. And until we see USC look functional on defense against decent offenses, like, sure, I mean, Nevada is one of the worst teams in college football, and even then Nevada was able to do a couple of things here and there. We saw San Jose State move the ball on USC. I think Stanford will be able to do it, and until we see just improvement on the field from the USC defense, and of course maybe they end up winning this game like 63-30 and they cover, I'm just like, I'm skeptical that they're going to be able to play good enough defense to cover 4 touchdowns against any conference opponent. It looks
if you get the San Jose State game, if you get the San Jose State effort from Stanford, that was 56-28. They cover. Like that's, exactly. I like that pick.
Agreed. I think we also have the same pick, Utah over Baylor. Do you have that on your card?
I backed out of that pick as much as I really like it. I'm just terrified because I think Utah is a much better football team, but still the no quarterback situation on the road just kind of scares me. And Baylor now kind of has their back up against the wall. And even though I think they were terrible in week 1, part of me still thinks Dave Aranda is a solid head coach who gets to. So I'm just that's a game. I on paper I love Utah, but my head is just telling me stay away, just nowhere near it.
I'm going to lay the 7.5 on the road here. Baylor might be bad. They were terrible. They were terrible.
If I had to take a bet, I'd take your 7.5.
And maybe the play as a Baylor team total under. Their offensive line was horrendous against a group of 5 team, and they're now without Blake Shapen, who's out with an injury. So maybe the team total is the way to go there. They were very, very bad. I think Utah will be invigorated and energized. And of course, they also played that early game, that Thursday night game, so they got a little bit of extra rest. Maybe we'll see. They had 8 guys out against Florida. We'll see how many guys are back. We know they like to be a little clandestine with their plans there. The other Pac-12 game that I took, and I was on the fence about taking 2 6.5-point home underdogs. I'm going with the Cal Bears at home against Auburn.
Wow.
Plus 6.5. Give me the points there. Auburn UMass was able to run the ball on Auburn until Tyson Pumachan hurt his leg, and then they were able to kind of shut that down. But early on in that game, UMass was able to move the ball on Auburn. Auburn hasn't really that was their first game against a bad team whose quarterback got hurt. Cal, this is what we know. They're going to want to run fuck you to death. Like Jaden Nod is really good. Isaiah Ifanse is a really good backup running back. They've got a bunch of guys. They're dealing with a quarterback injury situation too. But Auburn going across the country to play in Berkeley, a mausoleum at 10:30 at night. This is Pac-12 SEC football after dark against a team that's just going to want to run the ball down their throats all day. I'm going to take Cal. The one I left off was Washington State plus the 6.5 against Wisconsin. I don't fault anybody who takes that number either. I think Wisconsin's got to work through some things, just kind of figure out what they're going to be. So I think that's a really tough road test. I did not have that on the card. The last one, it kind of breaks my heart to kind of put this on the card, but this is basically the distracted boyfriend meme. You're familiar with that? Where the guy, like the angry girlfriend looking at her boyfriend who's checking out the other woman. The jilted girlfriend in this case is going to be UTSA, and the new attraction is going to be Texas State. I'm going to take Texas State in the 13.5 on the road at UTSA. I know it's a road game, but San Marcos isn't that far from San Antonio. I think this is too many points for a UTSA offense that might not be very good. Frank Harris, I talked about his knee injury last week. He was struggling to really throw off of his leg late in the game against Houston, and he took some hits, and I'm not sure that they're going to be that good. Like, that's one of those, like, you have my attention in a bad way kind of things. I really like what Texas State's offense did. I talked about them on Tuesday. I think this team is frisky, and if I'm going to get close to 2 touchdowns there, I'll take it and just run the risk that maybe UTSA just does kind of run them off the field. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Texas State is cooking with something there. So Texas, Alabama under 56.5. I'd go down as probably about as far as 53-ish. Stanford plus 29.5 is what I got. I'd go as low as 28.5. Utah minus 7.5, Cal plus 6.5, Texas State plus 13.5. I know you've got Stanford as well at a better number than I took it at. Matt, what else do you have on your card?
Let me pull up my DraftKings because I have it open. I'm going with Stanford plus the 30.5. Like you said, I'm going to trust USC's defense when they give me a reason to trust them, and I think they're going up against the best opponent they face this year. Not that saying much. I don't think San Jose State's very good. Obviously, Nevada is a very bad program. I think Stanford's going to be able to score some points in this one. They're going to lose by 20-something points, but I don't think it's going to be 30.5. So we're going to take them there. I added the Baylor team total under 19.5 to my card because I mean, it's not a show if I don't add a card to or a pick to my card while reading off picks. Like you said, the quarterback injury for Baylor, how bad they looked, I think that's probably the way to go, even though I'm still kind of a Dave Aranda believer. I'm going over 66.5 in Ole Miss Tulane. I just think that's going to be a points fest, and both teams are going to go back and forth. I think there's some fireworks there. Taking Notre Dame minus 7.5. I think they cover and take care of business. Talked about that one already. Texas A&M minus 3.5. We were talking about that game in our preview, and I mean, I said how much I like them, so I'm going to take them to cover that 3.5. I don't think it's all that much of a problem for them. Where else here do I have Iowa minus 4.5 in the garbage bowl or whatever the hell we call that game, the boring bowl? I don't think Iowa State's very good, and I know Iowa tends to put things in neutral after beating Utah State, but I think their offense can just do more, and I think they're going to score some weird, wacky defensive touchdown at some point because that just always happens in this game.
Isn't McNamara hurt?
Is he?
I think he's playing, but I think he has a leg injury of some kind. I just think I saw somewhere that like him being able to bootleg and do some of the things they like to do on offense might be a little tricky. But
interesting.
So you might want to look into that. I mean, you've already bet it. So it is
I have not already made the bet. So
I would look into that. I would just double check that status before you lock in that bet.
Fair enough. That one's got an asterisk.
So I'm holding you to it.
That one's got an asterisk to it. And then I'm trying to find the line, but I don't think this is right. How big of a favorite is Boston College against Holy Cross? I can't find it.
Those lines, that won't come out until Saturday.
All right. I don't care what it is. We're taking Holy Cross with the points.
Oh, Holy Cross money line.
Phil's Crusaders. Phil's Crusaders going to Chestnut Hill, cover, maybe even win. And if they don't win, they rip Phil's heart out with like a last-second loss. Sorry, Phil. But in a good way, you get your heart ripped out.
Oh, there's one other that I've got to take, Matt, and I've got to do this. And I'm so glad you brought this up. I've got to do this on principle, and I regret it. Hold your nose.
No.
Who's the worst Power 5 team in the country this year?
Northwestern.
Give me Northwestern plus 100 against UTEP. Northwestern is a home underdog to UTEP. Matt, do you know the last time UTEP beat a team that is currently in a Power 5 conference?
We talked about, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't know off the top of my head.
It was the 1967 Sun Bowl against Ole Miss.
Oh, we did talk about that.
It's been over 50 years since UTEP has beat a Power 5 team anywhere, and they are laying points at Northwestern.
I'm so happy I live in Illinois and just can't even be tempted by Northwestern games.
You can't be tempted to dunk away your bankroll on betting against North. Although, I mean, the Rutgers game was an easy no doubter. I gotta sneeze. I'm good. Sorry.
There we go.
It's gonna happen at some point. I'll just mute, but nevertheless. All right. Well, that'll do it for us. I'm gonna let Matt go because he's got to go get ready to talk basketball. Because Matt's like Mr. Content now. He just does football and basketball.
I'm just kind of like I'm just the ultimate fill-in man. Like whoever needs someone. Like I'm the sixth man off the bench, and I got to fill a whole lot of roles. So
you're the utility content fielder.
And we have points in the podcast, but if you watch points in the podcast, it's usually Eli being the really smart one, and then me being the casual basketball fan, kind of chipping in with some points and some questions here and there. But Eli's a wealth of basketball knowledge. It's his show. I'm just living in it.
You're just kicking it with him. Well, go check that out. That'll be on the BetSports account, right? On the BetSports Media, or is that on
in like 15 minutes. BetSports Media,
the Bleacher Nation. So it'll be on here. You can same bat channel, as the kids say. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for that. We will be back early next week to recap all of these games. Maybe Monday.
I can't wait. I love college.
Who knows? It's gonna be really exciting. There's like a million games.
Maybe Phil will be back. Who knows?
Maybe Phil will be back. Who knows? Go Notre Dame. Go Colorado School of the Mines against Angelo State. A big D2 showdown. Go enjoy and again, I will say the last thing I'll say before
give me a hook 'em.
Before I shout out my squad. If you have the second screen experience, please check out the South Dakota State Montana State game. It's the same time as the Texas game. Give the FCS some love. That's going to be a really good game. It's going to be a really good level of football. So check that out. Hook 'em horns. Let's go on the road. Let's just at least not embarrass ourselves, but let's try to get a big win. Why not? We're going to Tuscaloosa. Might as well walk out of there with a dub. But we'll be back whatever happens to recap the show next week. We will talk to you then.